The one question I get asked, other than where do you come up with your ideas, is how do you name your characters? Believe it or not, that is probably the hardest part of writing a story. I mean, coming up with an idea, I can see something in the news, I can come across an old newspaper article, I can overhear a conversation, which has happened a few times, and I say, ooh, that would be really cool. But then I've created a world that I have to populate with characters that you can identify with, that you can believe are going to have to solve a problem, be the villain, be the victim, be the sidekick, be whoever. To a large extent, whatever name you give them kind of defines not only the character, but the character's character. When Dashiell Hammett or Raymond Chandler sat down and wrote The Big Sleep, The Maltese Falcon, or whatever, you had Philip Marlowe, you had Sam Spade. Conceivably, if those characters were named Wilberforce Wiffleball, Ashley Longbottom, or something like that, the stories could have been just as good, but it would have been a heck of an uphill climb. But Philip Marlowe, solid, dependable, no nonsense. Sam Spade, the same thing, hard bitten, cynical, not going to put up with, any nonsense. He's not going to waste time. When I was coming up with the Roadhouse Sun series, the main character, Cameron Walsh, was not somebody that I had a hard time with him. I wanted to call him Cameron Wall because it sounded kind of artistic. He was a musician, so Cameron, it's a very masculine sounding name. It's a no nonsense name, but at the same time, it has a little bit of flair to it. So I wanted that for a musician. But he had to be somebody that was going to be anchored. He was going to be a solid character. He was going to have to be holding this whole storyline together. Well, what was his last name going to be? I tossed around a few other ones, and a few other people also got involved. And I was going to name Wall, but they said, well, running up against a brick wall, this is how about Walsh? Kind of got the inspiration from John Walsh, who, had, America's Most Wanted. Somebody who went after the bad guys and tracked them down and did not rest until he had found them, brought them to justice. So that's how Cameron became Cameron Walsh. Well, he needed a few other ancillary characters that were going to be helping him out. And he needed one sidekick that was going to be very dependable, also very solid, very rooted, very grounded, somebody that wasn't going to back down, was going to be as faithful as, a dog. And that one I named Doug Cortland because he was a roadie. He sometimes had to do security at the shows where the band performed. He had to make sure that all the stuff was properly loaded and unloaded. He had to make sure that, nobody bothered the equipment. Nobody messed with the truck as they were getting from one gig to another. He had to make sure that he took care of everything, including the band sometimes. So I had to give him that kind of a Doug, solid, dependable. Cortland, there's a dignity to him. He's not just somebody who drags his knuckles on the ground. He's very loyal, he's very dependable, and for the characters that I didn't like, I just found the most annoying names I could think of, and I said, that's who I want, and that's where they came from. Another way that I find for coming up with names is I think about the age of the person. How old is that character? Are they going to be in their 60s? What time period is it set in? Okay, say they're going to be 80 years old now in 2022. What I would do is I would go back and I would look and see what names were most popular for children 80 years ago. And I would just flip through that list and pull something out. And believe it or not, that's a really good way to see how much names have changed over the years, as well as to see how much they haven't. And that is one of the other ways that you get a connection, because something unfamiliar and familiar at the same time. So, what's in a name? A heck of a lot.